without your support. So we're really happy that we continue on having conversations about the borderlands that go much beyond than just the cliche of the borderlands. So I'm really excited to just read a little part of my book that I did under this project called Nogaleria, that many of those Nogalenses have noticed already. Some murals that came up during the last year in ambos Nogales, actually, Nogales, Arizona and Sonora. And we are very inspired in the history of Nogales. That's why we chose important things like a figure like Charles Mingus, who was born in Nogales, Arizona, and became a legend. So that was the first mural that we did in Nogales, Arizona at the Music Center. So we lined it up perfectly and had the support of Miss Noon that owns the building. And we're really looking forward into diving a little more into the history of Nogales, because there's so much more that has happened here than we know. And we can only rescue that knowledge by listening to oral history. That's really one of the most important arts that we should really try to save, because right now with this pandemic, we saw that unfortunately a lot of our elders passed away, and there's a lot of knowledge that they have. Even still, a lot of people in the community, everybody has their history. So we really want to like get out in the community and hear more about the history so that it can not be lost, if that makes sense. So my little part that I'm putting into is with this project Noareria is talk about the history. And I want to just read a part. It's a segment of my second poem called Downtown, that you guys can also purchase my book, Nogaleria, with me, and in different places of town. Also in Tucson, we are available there in some places that I'll show you the links later on. For the Instagram page, Nogaleria, and Facebook page is also active, so you guys can also reach us out there. And we're eager to hear also about ideas that the community members have, so that we can later on put it in art. So I'll read this. Of course, you know my style, I'm a hip hop. So this is how it goes. It says, going down south, I'll show you the route on the way to the border. This is what I found. Since 1914, the old city hall and fire station still standing tall. I take a look in the past, preserving the path, diving into the facts of where I'm at. Details can go unperceived, even in places so busy like these. The origins of some findings are not specified. Can't help to find it mysterious. Some things have been here for over 100 years, but may still be new to us. And under the same sky from 100 years ago, the same moon shines over the same hoods and the same streets that one day were dust roads. Dust that is under the asphalt still, dust that was once our ancestors' skin, and as part of their will, they will live within me infinitely. I am a branch of this tree. As I root, I grow and have no boundaries. It feels like a responsibility to investigate the history of this land that was taken during the conquest. Mexico gained independence from the Spanish monarchy, and in 1841, this land was granted to the Elias family. This area had many walnut trees. That's how the name for the ranch Los Nogales came to be. Yeah. So just a little bit on touching about how the name Nogales came to be, which is the walnut trees that were very abundant in this area. And it's another one of those things of walnut trees that they say that the person that plants them doesn't ever get to really see the fruit. So it's really a metaphor that I take for what I'm doing. So let's hope that with this type of work that we're doing, along with all the arts in the borderlands, have this goal of making our roots stay very well present in the youth. So that's something that we really want to push for here in Nogales and everywhere in the world, because like a quote says, preserving our own culture does not mean disrespecting the rest. So with a lot of love from Nogales, we're here and we're so excited to hear about these awesome projects that really just take over. It's not one type of art or one type of topic. And out of 21 artists that have this PandemiDiarios opportunity, we have 3 today. So it's very exciting to speak to somebody as our next presenter. Is that a good time to start presenting Mr. JD? One moment. It's really interesting. JD Aragon is an indigenous two-spirit artist with albinism from the Hopi village of Sipaulovi, residing in Tucson since 2008. JD, also known as Sami Vaya to his tribal community, has found and embraced diversity through his lived experiences and collaborations with others. Despite his visual impairment, JD has adapted to learning various art forms in mixed media, digital media, and music. He's also established a career in youth development, serving as a role model, mentor, and advocate. So please, JD, tell us about yourself and also your project for PandemiDiario, which I really can't wait to hear it from you. So take it away.
Kokoy. Sami Vaya yan Hopi matsewa, JD yan pahan matsewa. My Hopi name is Sami Vaya, and my family just calls me Sami. My husband, introduces me as Sami to everybody. So as mentioned in my introduction, I have lived in the Tucson area since 2008. My project is focused on a video idea that I had and making like a small documentary or a mini doc video. One thing that entered my mind, when I came across a flyer of, the call to artists and we're thinking of, ways, creative aspects and the medium that you work with. I thought of reflecting on my own home community, how COVID has really struck and impacted our community in the traditional sense, right? Where as indigenous people, we have a ceremonial calendar that happens throughout the year and it's ongoing. It never ceases, especially within Hopi. We follow the lunar cycle and there are certain ceremonies, not only that take part within secret societies that you're initiated into, but also amongst the community as a whole. And as a social, as a very socialistic tribe, there's a lot of interaction, a lot of meeting, a lot of families coming together for these ceremonies that we host in our villages throughout the year. And how COVID has impacted that in, very pretty much obstructing our traditional calendar in where, these dances would normally be taking place. It's not happening or it hasn't happened. And so that got me thinking about, locally within, the border regions here in the South. And my mother being a educator as well, and she has worked in the sales community for over the past decade now. She frequently tells me stories of her children who frequently migrate across the border, performing pilgrimages that they do within their own tribe, but also the fact that their tribal lands extend internationally as well into, Mexico. So that got me thinking on how has, this impacted the local indigenous community in performing their ceremonies as well. Because I hear a lot of stories from at home. I'm connected with everybody on social media from my own reservation, but also wondering And through the friends that I've established, local artists, one person in particular who I'm excited, am scheduled to be interviewing is a local artist herself. She is very active within, her culture. And that's how we met, was through the women's basket dance group that she hosts with her family, her nieces, her daughters, you know. So that was one connection that I was able to establish early on when I first moved down to Tucson, and we've frequently been keeping in touch. So she is one person that I'm really excited to include in this project, and her experiences, and how has it affected things like the cactus harvest that they do within their communities. And because in indigenous communities, we all know we always come together for gatherings. It's always those gatherings, and being told that you cannot gather anymore. Also mentioned earlier was the oral history. This is how we learn, is through one-on-one interaction. There's no how-to book out there for any of our traditional ceremonies. So that was one idea that I had that I felt was an important story to tell. My own background in the media that I create on my YouTube channel, sharing my experiences in living as an indigenous person with albinism who is also gay, all these different identities. The indigenous one is, I think, something that I have been pushing for the most in recent years is the indigenous narrative. I host a podcast with my sister, which you can find on the platform of Anchor, or even on Spotify. You can find us. We're under Indigenous 21, all one word, like Forever 21, but Indigenous. And we discuss modern. Our tagline is modern Native narratives. 21 meaning the 21st century. So I felt that sharing Indigenous stories, something that's not pushed a lot in the mainstream media. That's where my focal point is right now in terms of creating digital media, digital videos, digital content. That's something that I feel is important to document. So that's why I pursue digital media content focused on Native stories.
Wow, that is so amazing that I can't wait to go to your YouTube channel and see all your material, because I really think these types of opportunities, PandemiDiarios is giving, because, for example, I believe in your case, it's something that's not really touched on, and a lot of people are ignorant. Me coming from a different background and being so close in the territory, I have no idea of these types of things, which I believe everybody just that lives here should know as a fact. So that's really
Correct, right. So I can also attest to, working at a school right now that has a very high, Hispanic Latino population. I think a lot of the times when you think border, international border between the U.S. and Mexico, people automatically heavily think Mexican culture. But then coming from the indigenous community, if I were to ask one of my students, about their indigenous identity as a Latino, what is the history of your people? It's often that indigenous identity that is either erased or just forgotten, And I think the underlying important thing that I want to showcase through, this particular aspect, this particular subject of between the cross-border lifestyle is the indigenous life, the indigenous perspective has always been there, and it's something that has been forgotten. People from Mexico, we always tell you guys, you are indigenous too, you're native too. You can wave the Mexican label all you want, but underneath that, we know you're also indigenous.
definitely, definitely. Once we really analyze these types of things, we can tell that this goes really way back in history, like this path that now the border is just cutting up in between has been there forever. Like it's probably the most ancient thing in America. So it's thank you for sharing that, and making a lot of us have this other perspective of what the border really is. It's not just one story that the border can tell.
Yeah,
So
I'm excited as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I really appreciate that. We're going to go on to the next project from Jonathan Henao Munoz. He is an international first generation graduate student from Manizales, Colombia. He holds a master's in Hispanic linguistics from the University of Arizona and a master's in modern languages and literatures from University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Currently, he is completing a master's in French linguistics and second language teaching and learning. John is an applied linguistic focused on Romance languages acquisition, corpus linguistics, trans-affirming pedagogy, language and translation technologies in the additional language classroom. John is also interested in the intersection of digital humanities and social justice issues. Very important nowadays. So Jonathan, please tell us all about you and your project.
Of course, thank you so much for the introduction. So basically, I'm an international student and I consider myself an academic migrant because I'm here in the United States just because I was starting my graduate studies here 5 years ago. So the project I'm going to present today is a project that I was thinking on since 2009, not since 2019. So basically, it is a podcast project in which I'm considering the Tucson and the Arizona communities. Its name is Podcasteando, which means podcasting, border narratives during the pandemic. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. Next, please. Here we have what is the purpose of this presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, what are the stages of the podcasting series, and the participant I'm considering for this, and also the product that is expected by the end of this project. So this is a Confluence Center for Creative Inquiry recipient award project, and this is wonderful because I have tried last year, but last year there are several applicants, and I say maybe this one was, and this one was the opportunity to show what was planning. Next, please. So, as they told us, Priscilla told us, I'm a first generation scholar, I'm an academic migrant. I'm from Manizales, Colombia, that unfortunately right now is in a crisis because of the government. And I have been here in the States since 2012, since 2016, yeah. I've been in Nebraska, I have been in Arizona, I have experience in the Midwest and here in the borderlands. My research interests, as they told, are more related to language acquisition and translation. But here, the most important thing is I'm also focusing on digital humanities and social justice issues. Why this? Because you cannot put apart language and culture, or both are related, and there are socio-historical factors that tie them together. Next, please. In this Podcasteando project, basically, my main concern is how to inform people beyond the academic walls and how to involve the unrepresented communities within my projects. In academia, we have this is like a bad habit that the longest paper you write down, the better. The more complicated words you use, the better. So it is not accessible for the people, the real people that it is supposed to be to receive benefits from our research. So by using digital humanities, I'm trying to take current social issues into the digital humanities to be able to transmit the ideas, the concerns, the stories of the people, in this case, the unrepresented communities of the borderlands. Next, please. As I told you, this was born since 2019 because of the Digital Humanities and National Humanities Center internship I made in a summer, which I learned about digital humanities and podcasting as well. And it helps me to have the tools to how to implement digital humanities projects in the community. Next, please. So In some words, we have the following stages. We are going to have 5 interviews with Arizona borderlands and represented communities. Also, we are going to have a website with text transcription and pictures of visuals of the participants, and for being accessible for the people with listening issues. Also, we are going to, I say we, but we are going to upload it in streaming platform as well and social media to spread the word. Because in some cases, what we research on or what we create, it is not known unless you make it viral, unless you share it online or share it with the communities in different platforms and different formats. Next, please. In this case, in these stages, we have, I mentioned borderland community members. This one is like something particular to me, as in this case, I would say that I'm 90% of the borderlands community members that is described here, that is BIPOC, is LGBTQ+, is international, is a student, is Tucsonan in some way, and is an outsider and an insider within the Arizona community. The idea is to share her, his, and their stories. How, before, during, and maybe after the pandemic, what is going on? What are the conditions they live? What are the conditions they were living and or have been living until this moment of the pandemic? Also, considering that there are several conditions in the participants that, because of the race or ethnicity, because of the gender or gender identity, because of the sexual orientation, is going to be diverse. Because of the government policies, is going to affect in a way or other. So this is the main idea of having the participants from the underrepresented communities, because the pandemic affects us in different ways, in different levels. Next, please. And so this is the timeline. Once we finish the semester, I have my oral exams tomorrow, so I will be graduating soon, and I will be able to take the time to have the products on time. And finally, if you want to get updates or following the project, please follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Spotify, Anchor as well, as Podcasteando BN, Border Narratives. And if you have any question, any doubt, let me know. Next, please. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. And that's all. Thank you.
Very well, Jonathan. That sounds like very interesting. Also along the lines of what we were just talking about, of listening to people's stories in the borderlands. So can't wait to listen to that podcast series. Is that going to be more than one podcast? You have a few things.
In this case, it's going to be what is starting. So it's going to be one, like the first season of 5 podcasts with different members of the community. And we have the advantage of being in the borderlands, which is a diverse community. And when I say diverse, it's in all sense possible, not only because of the borderland people, because of immigration, but also because of their condition as a woman, as a male, as a non-binary person, as a trans person, also as the condition they have within the university, because this idea was born as well because of the condition we have at the University of Arizona, in which during the pandemic, several coalitions appeared. The coalition called COVA, the coalition, the queer coalition, also the Black American students, the African American students. So there are several waves of people and represent people within the community of that they bloomed during the pandemic. So I was thinking they have stories to tell, they need to be heard, and this is the great opportunity to make their voices be heard.
Definitely. Wow, that's amazing. Have the people's voices be heard that are usually the ones that are quieted. No, in a way, we are a little outcasted. The way of thinking affects us. I feel maybe the borderlands affects in our way of thinking too. So it's very interesting to just analyze as a general, like you said, from all perspectives, get bits and pieces here and there of what we want to know. What is it that we want to know about the people? It's a great documentation project.
Thank you.
Felicidades. Very well. So we're going to continue on. As you can see, these projects from PandemiDiarios range from all kinds of different projects and views of seeing the borderlands. The last presenter that we have is Monica Martinez Diaz. She is a visual artist who uses photography, video, design, and installation to create conceptually based work focused on the hyper normalization of violence in Northern Mexican society. Her work examines individual narratives pulled from her own experience growing up in Ciudad Juarez that attempts to understand her role as a conflict zone citizen. Her artwork functions as a visual representation of the inherited conflicts that encompass the territory of the southern U.S. and northern Mexico. Monica received a bachelor's in photography and a master in fine arts and studio from the New Mexico State University. And she's working on a photo book reflecting life during the pandemic. So please, Monica, introduce yourself and let us know more about your PandemiDiario.
Hi, guys. Hi, so happy to be here. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. Your support is greatly appreciated for this project. So as Priscilla said, I'm Monica Martinez. I'm an artist, but also academic. So I teach art currently for El Paso Community College and Adams State University, which is a university in Colorado. So yeah, I'm between like an artist and academic. So for this project, which I'm in the process of finishing it, it's a photographic book that it's very personal, which is different from my other projects. And it's perfect for this topic, this broader topic, which is PandemiDiarios, which is our experiences during this global event that changed our lives, right? And I think that from all the art that I've ever made and all the photos I have taken, this project was definitely the most tense, burning, and to a certain point, the most painful project I've made, mainly because of the situation and then what was happening and the way I kind of tried to understand what was happening through this photo book. So it was produced during this super complex worldwide situation. And I just want to say something, that this book is only a tiny little part of this whole situation. Is just my perspective. I don't want to talk for anybody's perspective but mine, not even my family, because I know that they lived it differently than me. I think as artists, sometimes we like to talk in general, but no, this is just about what happened in my home, in my life. So it's very different from yours or my neighbor. I just want to make that very clear. So the book is a collection of photographs. Oh, wait, 1 second. Okay. So the book is a collection of photographs, and it just pretty much aims to narrate my experience living in the U.S. border during this pandemic, what it was like to be in isolation, what were the feelings, what was the emotions. And as you can see, this is the cover. It says quejas, and that's kind of like a public transportation bus. We call them rutas in the border. I don't know if you're in your hometown. And it says quejas, which is pretty much complaints, and then it has what I believe is Jesus or God. So I thought it was kind of funny and sarcastic because I had a lot of complaints when I took this picture, and I thought it was kind of sarcastic because I'm a very sarcastic person. So this is the cover of my book, and this image was actually taken with the phone. I wasn't very controlling when it comes to the art making. I was more free and it was more flowy. So I took pictures with a professional camera, a DSL camera, my phone, a Polaroid, even my computer camera. Whatever was in front of me and whatever I was feeling and whatever was in front of me, I was taking pictures with that. So I wasn't very like planning and staging and the lighting, and it had to be perfect. I didn't care about perfection, just about being real. So the images are very unfiltered. As I told you, I didn't plan anything. It was just in the moment. They needed to be real. They needed to really capture what was happening in that moment. So if you can go to the next one, Leona. So for example, in my situation, as I told you, this is my own narrative. I don't want to speak for anybody, but in my situation, I was isolated with my mom, and we were taking care of my grandparents, which lived next door. So I took isolation and quarantine very seriously. I didn't see anybody that wasn't outside of this little circle because of my grandparents. They're almost 90 years old. So I spent a lot of time in my home and their home. And that was it, pretty much. So the word isolation and the word loneliness has been used in this past year very often. But this book is not about loneliness, because I never felt alone. I just felt isolated from the outside world. So in this image, I have two juxtaposed images, photos. One, which is kind of like a very modern like security camera that my grandparents had, and then an older one is like 20 years old, and then a phone. So it's like all these generations clashing at the same time in this small space, and that's how it felt for me in this situation. It was me, I'm almost 30, my mom who's 50 something, and then my grandpas who are 90, and we're all trying to coexist in this small space with very limited with a lot of limitations. So I thought this photo was like the perfect representation of what was happening. Also, I included the newspaper next to it, kind of like like if they're in a relationship, pretty much, because communicating with the outside world, as I told you, I never got out. I never got COVID. My mom did. So whenever she recovered, she was the one going outside, getting the groceries, and I never got out. So my way of communicating was the phone, the newspaper, and television. Can you go to the next one? I also, as I told you, I photographed a lot of emotions that happened with these three people that I was leaving, my grandparents and my mom, because there were moments of boredom, real boredom, when you don't have anything to talk about anymore, when you don't even know what to say, and sometimes you don't even want to talk anymore. So when those moments of silence happened, the only thing I had as an artist, as a visual person, was to photograph. So for example, here's my grandma. We talked about, I don't even know, about her childhood, and then all of a sudden we didn't have anything else to say, and we were just enjoying our presence, but we were bored. So I took a picture of that. If you can go to the next one. Also, the title of this book, I'm debating a little bit. At the beginning, I wanted to just leave the first image, which says quejas or complaints. But then I was like, okay, I was complaining a lot, but not everything was a complaint, because I was grateful for a lot of things. So that didn't match a little bit. So I'm between feelings are not facts, or feelings are aren't facts. So as I told you, we were very isolated, taking care of my grandparents, and you don't have much, but your presence, your company, and feelings, that was all I had. And also I had a lot of pain, like physical pain, that I had to go through this pandemic. This is my back. This is an x-ray of my back. And I didn't go to doctors. I didn't go to my therapist. I go to a lot of therapy for the pain. And I couldn't go to these because I know I was going to put my grandparents in danger. So I decided to just live with the pain. This book also kind of narrates the physical pain that I was going through, and all those days that I couldn't leave my bed. And so it was like kind of like a combination between all these very confusing feelings that I lived, and my family, we're thankful that we have a home, but we're scared, and we're in pain, but we're scared again, and but we're thankful. We let's not remember to be thankful. So it was like this roller coaster of emotions, and this is exactly what I want to show in this book. When you go to the next page, you're going to see something different, that maybe it's calming, and then the next one is going to be something chaotic and painful. So for example, in these two pictures, I have my back, which is quite painful to watch. And honestly, it makes me cringe. And I know a lot of people cringe when they see it. So, and then I have this Greek ancient statue that it's so beautiful and so stiff and so dead. And I think about how it doesn't feel any pain, but then I am in the other side of the page and I'm alive and I'm very flexible, but I'm in a lot of pain. So it's like this combination of not feeling and feeling. How am I doing in time? Okay. So, and also the title of this book, in which I'm still tweaking a little bit, it comes from this idea that when we treat feelings as facts, we eliminate the need to test our conclusions, and that was what was happening in my life and during this period of time. Until now, we're still in the pandemic. Everything that I was experiencing was through feelings, and I didn't care about the facts, and there was so many confusion out there and what was happening. So all I had was feelings. So that's a very important part of the title, the word feeling, and both physically and emotional. And that's it. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I know it's very personal what you brought to the table, kind of opposed to the previous projects we were talking about, that kind of talk more about the collective and the society in a way. So in this project, it really makes us go into your world for a second, while we see these pictures. And it also gives me a really big sense of importance, what you said, of being thankful and having a home and just being alive. It's very important, and we forget sometimes those little details that are so big, right? Because that's why we're here. So I really appreciate that that it's so personal. I think it's beautiful. You're such an artist, and can't wait to see the finished project. So felicidades, Monica. So we're gonna go on and continue to the Q&A. I know that we already have a few questions here. It says, from Christian to JD and Jonathan, can you talk about your process for selecting participants to interview? What language will your interviews be in? I don't know which one of you want to start, JD or Jonathan.
I'll offer Jonathan can go first.
Thank you, JD. I was saying, why not you? Okay, basically, it's a very good question. And in terms of participant, I have the advantage of belonging to several coalitions within the University of Arizona that have different students. Also, from the BIPOC coalition, the queer coalition, and also I'm made part of the GSPC, that I'm a graduate representative for the College of Humanities in the GSPC, and Graduate Professional Students Council. So I have several resources in terms of the community members. And in terms of the language, because we are in the borderlands, we cannot deny that here there are lots, there are bilingualism, multilingualism, and because of language restraint I only speak Spanish, English, French, and Portuguese. So the community members I'm going to focus on are either Spanish, English speakers, or just English monolingual speakers. And obviously, Spanglish is more than welcome. There is no problem, because at the end of the day, we understand each other, and because of the resources we are going to have within the podcast, it is not only to be listening part. We are going to have the transcriptions, and when required, a specification within the language code they are using. And and I think that, yes, I respond to the question, yes.
So it's really interesting, right? Whereas my project is coming not from an interactive one that is being recorded. You know, I'll have the chance to have post-production and editing and all of that stuff. What's actually coming into my head right now, if you like are an avid watcher, because I am, of like Vice News through HBO, I know that when they conduct a lot of their interviews, people they're interviewing in other countries are speaking their native languages, right? And they're providing subtitles and translations, essentially. The struggle within the indigenous community, though, is that we are literally fighting to keep our language alive, you know? So one, it would depend on the fluency, on how people, you know, if they know their language, their native language well enough, I would, of course, be more than welcome to have them speak in O'odham. But then the translation bit, you know, would be like, can you provide me a transcript after we're finished recording of what you just said? But no, I think it's particularly for, you know, the native communities. I think it's really crucial that we do hear our own languages in media, because again, that reflects back onto representation. Our languages are dying within our native community. So I think, you know, posing that question, I think really speaks to me on the importance of having that be a representation in my project. Thank you.
Yes, definitely very important to keep the language alive, and hopefully you can get more of those in your project. But like you said, everybody's welcome, and also in Jonathan's project too. So we're gonna go on to the next question. It says, for all presenters, in what way does your perspective and representation of border lives compare to ways the border is represented in the media or in outside national narratives? And I think I can answer that since I'm in the all presenters. I wanted to just say that Nogalería does have that goal of leaving aside the stigma of all the violence and drug trafficking and crime that we live here. You know, that's why we want to put art more visible for kids and young people to be able to grab onto that instead of going onto the wrong way. So that's just something that we are battling. We don't want to focus on, for example, you know, for example, in my book, I didn't want to really focus that much on the border, although I do have a picture of the border. I didn't want to focus on the actual wall. I feel that sometimes they think of the wall of Nogales art and it's like a wall, like the outside color. And it's like, no, like there's so much more than that. So that's kind of what we do on our end. I don't know if Monica wants to go next.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as I told you, I'm currently in the Juarez El Paso border because I'm working in a university here. So I always go like from one side to the other one, because from one perspective, I think that the idea that the border is just like a very problematic city, that there's only death and cartels and drug smuggling. It's very problematic because there's life and there's happiness and there are parties. Well, not right now, well, some. And there are a lot of things happening here. People are having families and just living their lives. But at the same time, I feel that sometimes we locals, we deny that there are those issues. And there's also an issue, because we want to say like, no, my hometown is the best and we're so good. We are good people, the majority. But I think we can lie on the hypernormalization of violence and act as if it's not happening. So I think a balance between those is very important. Not go one way in denying that there's not, and then the other way is just talking about it like if it's the only thing. That's me.
Yes, thank you for that. JD?
Yeah, definitely. I will say from, you know, the native community perspective, my own experience from my homelands, the Hopi reservation is very unique in that we are totally encompassed by another reservation, which is Navajo. So, thinking of borders as imaginary, basically, right? It's something that is on paper. But when it comes to the actual cultural and living space perspective of it, like we don't see the border there. When my mom started teaching down in Cells, you travel from Tucson to Cells, it's only an hour away, but every time you go through that area, you pass through a border checkpoint. And that was something that was very, very new to our experiences, something we had never really encountered a lot before. But it's, over the past decade, it's something that it's there. It's something that you just go through. And I think getting a feeling of, like what was said earlier, is how the community that lives there, we do tend to not focus so much on the whole perspective. It's usually like what makes us comfortable within our own little bubble. Not to say that there isn't these negative aspects of what can occur in this area, but at the same time recognizing that borders are imaginary. What I was taught growing up, in my cultural lifestyle, is you do not build fences. You do not shut yourself out from the world around you, from others around you. So I think taking the cultural aspect, of a border, I think, reflecting on your own cultural upbringing, you either recognize it or you choose not to recognize it. That's a very unique experience, I think.
Thank you. Go ahead, John.
My case, as an international student, trust me, I'm Colombian, so I already survived. If I'm here, it's because I'm alive. And the thing is that the nationwide narrative on the border is anti-migration. So, by they understand migration in terms of you can say you are Mexican or not, or you are white or you are not white. So this is the huge issue, because once you arrive here, you receive the label. I stopped being Colombian when I arrived here. I become Latino, and I say, wait, what is Latino? And so it is like a mix of several things, considering that I'm a mix of indigenous, black, and white person. So what I am here, if I have to go to the doctor, 3 checkpoints, because I cannot choose between who I am more. I look more brown, I look more black or more white. So it's complicated, the perspective I have in terms of labeling here. I understand that labeling is important to represent we have different people. So we cannot say white or black, or non-white or white. That is the more appropriate one. So if I'm considering this within the project, is like I want to see more of what the people from the border is. So it's not just we have lots of Mexican people here in the border. I say, but Latino community is huge. All of them are valid and are different. So you cannot generalize. Obviously, there is a tendency there, and it's like to try to show more voices, different perspectives for the borderlands is what I'm aiming in my project.
Priscilla, we lost you for a moment. We're glad you're back.
Yes, I did. I lost connection there. So I did lose the question. I think there was a question right after that one, before the one we have from Monica. I don't know if you can read that one for me.
Yes, it was from Gloria, one of our other PandemiDiarios awardees, asking for our 2 interview projects, Jonathan and JD. Do you have specific questions you'll be asking, or is it more of an open-ended interview?
For my project specifically, it's more of an open-end. I'm coming from an open-ended perspective. I'm wanting to pluck people from various aspects, various sections. 1, educators. 2, like I already mentioned before, I do have a fellow artist from the Teal Nation on board. The experience of her traveling back and forth between living in Tucson, but also, staying connected and tied to her village community on the reservation. but there will be specific questions in regards to my project in how has COVID impacted personally your connections to family members across different communities, but also that spiritual connection and coming together, you know.
Very well. Thank you so much for sharing. We have another question here for Monica. How does this project specifically reflect your experience as a female border resident?
So I think about this often. I just want to be very clear that I grew up in a middle-class family with a mom who was a feminist. So I was very privileged to never feel in danger or never recognize it, at least. But that doesn't mean that I realize that a lot of women here are in danger in the public spaces, in their homes, the domestic violence, even though I didn't live it personally and I was never near it. We were fortunate enough to have our own transportation, so I never had to travel in public transportation, but that doesn't mean that it's a big issue right here, especially public transportation, public assault, domestic violence within the home, the police not doing anything. But I just wanted to clarify that I haven't been in that situation, but that doesn't mean that I cannot recognize the big issue we're living.
Of course, definitely having a bigger outlook on it. And Monica, what, this is from Christian, what has been your family's response to these images and project? What do they think about the project as they were putting it together?
So actually I'm in my mom's house and she just came in front of me and she was like, really good job, you spoke from your heart. Because she has always assisted to my talks, but it was when I was either giving a college talk or interviewing for a job or in my MFA, in my master's, in my thesis defense. So it was very academic. And maybe she didn't understand a few words, and she told me that this spoke from my heart. And it's true, because I think I didn't have that academic pressure to just write this big essay about it. And it was just like from here. And the whole point of this photo project, is feelings. So my mom is very proud. She's always been very proud of me being an artist, which is kind of funny because parents are like the opposite. And my grandparents, I think my grandma doesn't like to be photographed, but then she lets me do it anyways. And I told her that she's going to be in a book and she kind of likes it secretly, so she's fine. Yeah. My aunt, she's a photographer also from Juarez, so everybody supports me.
That's amazing. It definitely helps in the inspiration, I think, when family is there to support you and being your models more than just role models. You know, you're really actually taking photos of them. And a lot of us, I think, wish we had this experience of having this connection now with grandparents like that. So that's really beautiful. That you shared that in that way with us, because it's so personal. Pictures are definitely 1,000 words. So we have one question from Michelle here for Monica. Also, you're on the spot right now. It says, thank you for sharing this personal work. I wonder if you will continue to work during this strange in-between vaccine, not yet over pandemic era. Is it still a space you're interested in exploring? Perhaps another book? Also, how are your grandparents? Thank you.
Thank you so much. My grandparents are good. My grandpa's a little bit sick, but he's getting better. And they actually got COVID with no symptoms. Can you believe that? They got COVID. But thanks for asking. They're doing great. And about the other question, like in this between space, yeah, I plan on doing that. I think honestly, at the beginning of my career, when I was studying photography, I was very like specific. I need to use my DSL camera, like the big camera, and now I use these and the Polaroids. So I photograph every single day at least 50 images of, sometimes they don't even make sense. I'm like, why did I photograph these? But then when you sit down, like when I was sitting down and doing this book, just everything made sense. And when I looked at the pictures, I remember what I was feeling and what I was trying to communicate. And if I photograph it, it's because it captured my attention and it means something. So yes, I'm very interested of doing that. I've been taking a lot of pictures on the outside because I've been able to go outside a little bit more, and I've noticed a few funny, sarcastic things or crazy things. So definitely, yes, that's something I'm going to continue. Kind of like volume 2.
Right, it's like a never ending. How are you gonna end this type of a narrative, right? You're gonna continue living it and hopefully find different ways of keep doing this type of work, whether it's a book or maybe, you know, move on to other type of art as you also do. So I did want to ask this question to JD. I want to just have you explain, like, how has the pandemic affected your creative or cultural practices? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So one thing I can definitely say, moving a good day's trip away from my homeland originally was already putting a strain on my spiritual connection, right? Back to my village, back to my spiritual, my cultural responsibilities. So going the past 2 years now of not going back home, it does call in my personal sense, my sense of identity. And in terms of like, yeah, I was raised with a philosophy. I've had the philosophy growing up, where if you do not know your language, if you do not practice the cultural, spiritual, ceremonial aspect of what your identity is, and how can you claim that identity for yourself? And then at the same time, though, also recognizing, going back to somebody brought up, Jonathan, I think it was you who brought up the fact that where identity is based off of, where you come from, and how people are so quick to put a label on that, this is where you're from, so this is how you are, because you have this label. Where in the Native community, if you leave your home reservation, then they automatically write you off as like you're abandoning your culture. You're becoming assimilated into white culture. And because I now speak, having graduated high school from here, having had my career here, in this bigger area, other than the rural community where I'm from, I have this very articulate voice. I can present very well. Some people call me out on that from back home. They say I'm too bougie, or I'm too bahan, acting, too white acting. I guess really this pandemic has really made me question what adaptations are necessary in order for a culture to survive. And it's a topic that I am not afraid to bring up whenever possible within the Native community, within the indigenous community. And a lot of people were struggling right now because I often tell myself I come from a conservative community. In the white world, being conservative is seen, as like, pro-Trump and everything like that. But from a cultural perspective, being a conservative person just meaning you're more reflective to the old ways. You're wanting to preserve that lifestyle. But me having a disability and, coming out in my, when I turned 20, coming out to my family, I know that I am the only person from my reservation that is like saying, oh, I have a husband, I'm married, I have a husband. Other gay people that I know who come from my home village or who come from my reservation, I have not heard of them, in terms of identity, making that far of a leap in terms of being different. My albinism has helped to make me stand out in a lot of ways. So moving down here, again, being exposed to the diversity has helped me really embrace who I am. And that's something that I can thank my artwork for, is just putting who I am into my works. So the pandemic affecting my own personal, inner identity is really pushing me to consider, how do we perceive our culture? How do we perceive ourselves? How do we perceive our identity? So that's what, this ride, 2020, 2021 has been for me.
Wow, I'm speechless because I feel that, just like you said, 2020, 2021 has been a path of just realizing who you really are. Like, this has been happening to me in a whole different way, probably than you, but in the end, like, we're in the same path of coming to terms with our own selves, and coming out and telling people about it, and connecting with others that way. And we're so unique, but then it makes us really find out that we're all connected, we're all part of one. So it's just really something that more people have to be exposed to. I hope that this inspires people, because just like I see it in art, I feel that people have to see these types of things happening, or have it as an option, or just there for them to even know that it's like also part of them. So that's why I think everybody has to share their story, because it not only helps us heal ourselves, but also other people. So that's very powerful there. So we're gonna also gear a question onto, let me see. Yes, I wanted to gear that same question onto Jonathan also, because I know you're from Colombia, but then again, the borderland, and just the fact that you're close by, it makes you gear onto this narrative also, making it your own. So what would you most want, the question was, how has the pandemic affected your creative or cultural practices?
So that's a wonderful question. I would like to be creative. I try my best, but something that inspired me for this project was the idea of the human experience during the pandemic. And I say, wait, yes, all of us were human. That's understood. No problem there. But the human experience cannot be the same if there are social and racial justice issues. So it's different to living during the pandemic when you are, let's say, middle class white person, than being brown, being immigrant, being international, because as international students, we are low income people, but I think that lower income people. The thing is that this is affecting us in different ways, depending on the condition we have. Ethnicity, race, age, sexual orientation, sexual identity, gender. There are several factors that made me thought, okay, what we're going to do with this, what I want with this project. And basically what I want is to show different realities, different conditions. And we are in the borderlands, and in the borderlands, there are a mix of identities. As JD mentioned, we have, besides the ethnicity and the racial ones, we have, in terms of political orientations, in terms of gender identity, in terms of sexual orientation, there are more than, okay, you are middle class, good, you are going to survive with a relief check. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. There are not the same opportunities for the same people. It's different, and those had made me thought, why not? I should do a podcast. I need to know. I want to know what are the experiences for people different from me, or similar than me, that with different, let's say, privileges, if I would say that. But I think that we are almost in the same conditions. So this is something that made me think about this podcasting project.
Definitely, that's along the lines we were just speaking about, getting everybody's story and connecting with them. So I do want to ask this question also to Monica, so that we all have answered this question of, how has the pandemic affected your creative or cultural practices?
It has been wonderful. Creative speaking. So I I've never had a break since I started college. I was going to college, working 2 jobs, then I went to get my master's degree, another 2 jobs. Then I graduated and I was an adjunct. And if you're an academic, then you know how that goes. I was working in 3 different universities. Then I got a full-time position. That was crazy. So I never had a break of anything, of thinking. My brain was foggy. There was a point in which I didn't want to know anything about art. I mean, I was talking about art all day. It was just a lot for my brain. And honestly, isolation started to clear my mind, and I started to have clear thoughts and ideas, and my brain was what it used to be when I was younger. I mean, creative speaking. It also helped me to really listen to myself, because I only had me and my other 3 family members. So it was me, and that's it. So I was really listening to what I wanted to do. Also, there was no outside influence when it comes to making. There's a lot of pressure in the arts. Maybe JD can understand, like, to do it a certain way, and criticism and critiques, and people that maybe they want the best of you, but you don't want their opinion sometimes, telling you what to do. And in this case, nobody's there. It's only you. So I loved it, honestly. I really, really loved it.
Yeah, so that's like the other side of the coin, right? Of having that, thank God I have the time for myself. Because I know a lot of people suffered with like having to stop all the social events, and they do affect us in a way, but it's so important that we also have a positive outlook on having to do quarantine and all of this that we had to do kind of forcefully. It made us, for the people like us, that made us think in ourselves and in an introspective way. I think that's how probably everybody should have taken it, because it's really almost a year of just having this non-activity. So we have to now kind of think of our own activities, of what you're gonna do. Like, you have to find that just will of wanting to do something. So I think the pandemic was very, very strange in that, and the good thing in these types of scenarios that we are dealing with people like you and all the other presenters that have a lot to think and say, and just want to investigate and do. Like, this is just keeps on going, of being introspective in a way, and then coming out to the world and trying to find others' history, and trying to merge it with ours, and just analyze it. It just makes us have a greater picture of what we are in society. So thank you again for sharing all this information about your presentation. It's definitely best to hear it from the presenters, and I hope I get to meet you guys personally at some point at a show and tell with the Confluence Center. So thanks everybody that tuned in and listened, and that asked the questions that really makes us think more than just what our own vision. So thank you guys. I really want to see all these projects finished. I'll go on to the Confluence Center page to be following whenever they do the notifications and posting stuff. So everybody, please just go on to the Confluence Center pages, Instagram and Facebook, and make sure you guys are in tune with everything that's going on, and opening for future opportunities for community members. So any last words from, just wanted to say here, we have a few thank yous from the audience. Gloria Flores, she had a few good questions there. Thank you so much. We have Stephanie Bermudez from Startup Unidos. Thank you for always supporting. And we have David Taylor. Lovely work, everybody. Thank you, Monica. Let us know if your book will be printed in an edition and available for sale. Michelle Aguilera, thank you so much. Laurie, McKenna, everybody that tuned in. Any last words from the Confluence Center team? Thank you guys again for supporting people like me and the presenters. take it away, Javier.
I just want to thank you and the presenters and everybody that came today, and also our future presenters, because we have a number of projects that are in progress. We are really aware of that. I also want to thank Leona again for her contributions to the conference center, and best her the best wishes in her new professional adventure. Leona, muchas gracias. Thank you for all you've done for us, especially managing not only show and tells, but also relationships with a lot of our community members and our grantees. And I want to say that there's going to be very good news on behalf of the Conference Center. There's a lot happening that is still not official, formal, but there's going to be excellent progress coming in the pipeline. And I hope that you continue to not only following us and also participate with our projects, but also engage in trying to change this narrative of the border, because I think at the end of the day, that's part of what everybody's trying to do in some ways. And as we think of audiences, we should also think, who are we talking to? I think that's an important element besides ourselves, right? And in order to change and influence those narratives in the way that your projects are trying to do, we should also be a little intentional sometimes. So we hope that the Conference Center can become a space to direct some of those voices and narratives, and also create some reclaiming of these border narratives by the communities that are precisely located on the border, right? So I think that's an important component. As a friend of mine used to say, sometimes the border gets hijacked by the mainstream media, and we need to do something to desecuestrar el discurso de la frontera. So I think it's important to think in those terms, and also not in a binary way, but in the way that you are constructing and articulating your ideas. I think I was really pleased to see that you are very mindful and very respectful of not only the different populations, but also the flow and the intersectionality of many of the border encounters that we have here. So I really encourage you to continue these projects, and also thank you for, trusting the Conference Center as a partner. And there's going to be excellent news. I promise you, in the fall semester, you're going to be hearing from us, and it's going to be more work. But we're also excited in terms of the opportunities and the possibilities, while we also recognize that there are a lot of people that are still going to be in difficult situations. So we need to be also caring, and we also need to be responsive to the needs of our fellow human beings. So we hope that with that, I'd like to again thank the presenters and encourage you to keep following us. And we are going to be planning the show and tell series for the fall and the spring, and you'll be hearing from us very soon. Again, muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Best wishes for a good and safe summer, and we'll see you in the fall semester. Thanks again. And again, the team, Yadira, Christian, Jasmine, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. Good night.
Gracias.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.